Hello everybody. Today we will make the scarf. You can wear it on both sides. They're the same. First we will create the gray filet mesh, and then on top of that mesh we will crochet with the bulky yarn. For the gray filet mesh I used gray acrylic yarn, but you can also use cotton or nylon. The important part is that the color of the yarn should match the fabric that you're wearing the scarf with. So in my case I have a gray sweater that I would like to wear the scarf with, so I picked the gray acrylic yarn. And I hope that at the end I don't see that gray so much, and the stripes that I create with the bulky yarn really stand out. So if you have maybe a black leather jacket, you could use black, or if you have a red coat, you can use red. So all you see at the end is those stripes that we created with the bulky yarn. And for the bulky yarn, I had some balls from Yarn Bee left over, the Soft Illusion Super Bulky yarn, so I used that. I'm using the 9mm or M13 for the bulky yarn, and I'm using the 5mm or H8 for the gray yarn. Let's get started. Make a chain of 50. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Make 50 chains. I've made 50 chains, and that's the width of my scarf. You can make more than 50 or less than 50, but the number of chains, when you divide the number by 2, it has to come out to an uneven number. So in my case, 50 divided by 2 is 25, and it gives me 25 squares later on. And I want an uneven number of squares because we will fill these squares with these stitches later on, and I want the stitch to be on the outside square, and I want the stitch on the other side also to be on the outside square. So the number of squares has to be uneven, and that's why I chose 50, because 50 divided by 2 is 25, and 25 is an uneven number. I've made my 50 chains. Now I will chain 4 more. 1, 2, 3 for the double crochet, 1 for the chain space. And now I will count. This one doesn't count. Count this next stitch. 1, 2, 3, 4, and go into your 5th stitch and make a double crochet. That's our first square. Then chain 1, skip the next stitch. So here's where we made the double crochet. I'm skipping the next stitch, and I'm going into the next stitch, and I'm going only into the bottom loop, and I have the 2 loops on top of my hook, and I make a double crochet. Then chain 1, skip the next stitch and make the double crochet through the bottom loop again. That gives me a stronger foundation going through 2 loops. Here's our double crochet, skip the next stitch and make the stitch through the bottom loop, and you have 2 loops on the hook, and then make the double crochet. Chain 1, skip 1 and make a double crochet. And you should end up with 25 of these little squares, or whatever your number you picked. It should be an uneven number of squares. I will make my 24th square. I'm going to the last stitch. I'm skipping 1 and going into the last stitch into the bottom loop and make my double crochet. And I've made 25 squares. Start the next row, chain 3, 1, 2, 3 for the double crochet, and 1 more chain for the chain space. And I like to turn my work counterclockwise. Now I'm going directly into the double crochet. We're on the wrong side now, so we have to go to the left of the double crochet into 2 loops again and make a double crochet. Then chain 1, go into the next double crochet and make a double crochet. And we will repeat this pattern all the way to the end of this row. Skip over the chain and go in all the double crochets. Make a double crochet in the chain, a double crochet and a chain, and we will end up with squares on top of all the other squares that we made, so 25 squares again. Finish this round. I'm a row. I made a chain, and now I'm skipping over this chain here. The bottom loop is very small. It's right here, a very, very small loop, but I'm going into the next loop on the bottom, and I have the 2 loops on top, and I make a double crochet. Then chain 3 for the next double crochet and chain 1. That's the next row. Turn your work again. I like to turn it counterclockwise, and now I'm going into my double crochet again. Make a double crochet, chain 1, go into the next double crochet, chain 1, and so on. We will repeat these rows over and over. Chain 1, double crochet into the double crochet. When I turn my work counterclockwise, I will create this chain here. It's easier to see, that's why I like to do it that way. So you can either count 1, 2, 3 chains, or you can count this chain and skip it. But in any case, either skip this chain and make the double crochet, or 1, 2, 3, count 3 chains and make your last double crochet into this bottom stitch, which leaves you 2 loops on the hook. And then we can start a new round. 1, 2, 3, 4. And I like to turn it counterclockwise and then repeat double crochet into the double crochet, chain 1, double crochet into the double crochet, chain 1, and so on. And now you can make this scarf or this filet mesh as long as you want your scarf to be. Repeat these rows and just continue on and make the scarf. I finished my filet mesh, and my scarf is about 65 inches long now, or 166 centimeters, but of course you can make it as long as you'd like. And I'm finished with this hook now, and I will go to my bulky yarn and I will use the M13 or 9mm hook now. You can start at any corner that you like, and it has to be where the side of the scarf is going down this way, and this is the length of the scarf. So this is the long side and this is the short side. Put your hook from the bottom up through the first square and pull the bulky yarn through, and left a few inches for some fringe. Pull the bulky yarn through and then pull the short and the long yarn through again. Make a chain and then pull the short end out, and that will be our fringe. Now pull a long loop. The loop has to be as long as your square so the scarf doesn't get bunched up. Make a front post slip stitch. Then go to the next square around the next double crochet, pull a long loop again, and from the front to the back, from the back to the front, go around the next double crochet and make a slip stitch, and around the next double crochet, front to the back, back to the front, make a slip stitch, and always pull a long loop. And square by square we will fill in this mesh. And I think the most important part about this pattern right there is that you pull the loop long enough so you don't have the crunched up scarf right there, so you really have the same length. I will make one last slip stitch at the end of the row in my chain. And then one more chain to secure the yarn a little bit. And then I can cut it, and I will cut all my ends about the same length. Then I will pull the yarn out and I go back through the loop one more time, pull it through one more time just to secure it a little bit more. So I created this edge of slip stitches. Here's my end, and now I will turn my work over and I will create a second row of slip stitches. Here's my short side, here's my long side of the scarf. And we will make the same stitches in the same squares. So in the same square where you just made the stitch, right underneath the last stitch, pull a second piece of yarn through and repeat, pull it through again with both ends and pull the short end out. And we're working into the same squares as we did on the other way on the way up. Go exactly underneath the first slip stitch and make another front post slip stitch. Don't forget to pull your yarn long. And we're still in the first square, so make a slip stitch and then just move underneath all the previous stitches and make a front post slip stitch all the way up. Pull a long loop, move to the next stitch, to the next double crochet and make a front post slip stitch. And make sure you're staying in the same square. Sometimes this bulky yarn is hard to see and it's easy to move over to a different square. So this is how it looks. It's the same on both sides. At the end of this round, I make one more slip stitch and then make a slip stitch right underneath the last stitch, also still in the first square, right underneath our last stitch, or in the last round it was our first stitch. And then I want to secure my yarn again. I make a chain, I cut my yarn, then I pull it through, and I secure it one more time, pull it through the last loop just one more time. And now we can turn it and it looks the same on the wrong side as it does on the right side. And now we will repeat those 2 rows over and over. Turn your work over and now you see the next row of squares. Skip that second row and from the bottom up go into the third row into the first square and put your new string of yarn through and leave a little bit for the fringe. Pull again through and then pull the short end out to create the fringe. And now make a long loop and make the front post slip stitch around the next double crochet just as we did in the first row, and square by square we will work all the way across the scarf and make slip stitches into every double crochet. And when you look at those 2 rows, you can see already the effect that we are creating. I'm finishing my last slip stitches into the last square, and then around the chain the last slip stitch and a chain, and I will cut my yarn and pull the fringe out, and then pull the fringe through the last loop one more time to secure it a little bit. Now I will turn my work over again and repeat. Put the hook from the bottom up right underneath the first stitch. Make sure it's in the third square still, and put the yarn through. Then make a chain and pull the short end out. Then pull a long loop and go make the front post slip stitch into the first double crochet right underneath the front post that we made in the previous row. Make sure you're staying in the same square, and now go across this entire row and make the front post slip stitches underneath every stitch that we made in the previous row. And as you can see, the front and the back of the scarf look exactly the same. At the end of this row, make one more slip stitch into the chain right underneath the last stitch into the same square. Make a chain and cut the yarn. Then pull out, and then I put it one more time to secure it. Pull it through that same loop one more time just to make it secure. Now we will repeat these rows over and over until we reach the other edge of the scarf. Turn your work over, then skip the next row of squares, and then go into the next row, and then repeat those 2 rows that we just did until you get to the end. I finished my scarf. I still have to cut my fringe. Now I will finish the last row. I already crocheted the row up on this side all into the last square. Then I turned the work over, and now I will finish this last row right underneath the previous stitches like we did in the other rounds. Pull the long loop, make a slip stitch right underneath the last stitch, and then go into your very last square. Underneath that stitch, make the last slip stitch and one more chain, and now I can pull my yarn through, and I pull through one more time. And now I can take the 2 pieces of yarn from the same row, and I just tie a knot once and another knot, and this way those ends stay secure and they don't come loose. And I just go and do that on all of the rows. I always have 2 pieces of yarn on every row, so that's a nice thing to do, just to make sure the yarn doesn't come loose. I hope you had fun with this scarf. Thank you so much for watching, and I see you next time. Bye bye.